Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Enough channel. In this video we're looking at the NRL SuperCoach stock market going into round 17 of the 2023 season. So a fairly big week, a fairly tricky week with three teams on the bye that, a lot of players are very popular and owned by a large number of players. And also, I guess, some interesting teams named this afternoon. So, recording this on Tuesday night with Origin coming up on Wednesday night, and I'll actually be heading out to the game, so I probably didn't have the time to record it um, after after that time. So we will speculate on a couple of picks and the like, but I guess it is all subject to change going into Origin. But before we get into the players, we'll look at the updated buy rankings. And so uh, the number one rank, the Titans have shot right up, and that's purely because they've had their third buy. So the first team to get through all of their buys. So if you like any of the Titans players, you can pick them and assume they're playing the rest of the games, except for probably Tino Dave Fafita, who will probably play game three for Queensland if fit and available. Excuse me. So after the Titans, I guess the next best ones to look at are the Eels, the Warriors, and the Dolphins. So, Warriors and Dolphins have shifted up there. Those teams each have a bye left, but they play this week. They also play around 19 and 20, which are the other two sort of bigger bye rounds. So, really handy to have quite a few of those players in your side. The Eels do have the bye in round 18 though, so don't sort of go too hard on them. But if you sort of share it amongst those three teams, you'll be pretty well covered for the remaining big bye rounds. Sharks and the Tigers, they have their last bye this week, so pretty decent picks if you can afford to hold some of them. The Raiders and Dragons, they only have one bye left, but it is in round 20, so they play round 19, but then they're not available in round 20, so that's why they're ranked lower than the Warriors and the Dolphins. Then we've got quite a few teams there: Panthers, Storm, Roosters, Eagles, and Knights. So they aren't available in round 19, which is the final big bye round. But they play every other round. So if you can carry 13 in round 19, plus players from those teams, so your Harry Grants, your Teddies, your Turbos. I was going to say Nathan Cleary, but he's currently injured. Those sort of players, you should be fine to do that. South and the Bulldogs have dipped right down, but mostly because they've still got two buys, including this week. Souths, they have a buy in round 20 and then also another one to come. So just being mindful of that. And the Broncos and the Cowboys, they've still got two buys left and they don't play around 19. So, they're probably the players we want to start moving on where possible. Obviously, we probably want to carry Payne Haas, um, maybe Reece Walsh from the Broncos. The Cowboys, you might be happy with how Drinkwater's going. Um, Maybe Val Holmes, I suppose, playing Origin, so the round 19 thing's not the biggest issue. But yeah, I guess we'll have a look at the players and I guess with these updated buy rankings how they all measure up. So as always, we'll start with the premium hookers, 500k and above. And at the top of the list this week, I've added in Tanner Boyd. He hasn't appeared in the stock market video for a while. But as we just talked about, the Titans have no more buys to worry about. So he's a pick if you're looking for a cheaper sort of second hooker, particularly for the upcoming sort of 3-4 rounds. He's going to be available the whole time, and obviously you could hold him for the rest of the season if need be, if you're running super low on trades. Cody Nikorima. So I've put the ship sailed on this pick. He's still got a slightly um, sort of positive break even relative to his score. I just realised I haven't done the colouring this week, but that's okay. Um, Yeah, Sean O'Sullivan is named on the extended bench, so you'd assume he's going to be uh, looking to come back into the side sooner rather than later. But my gut feeling is when that does happen, it'll be Nicarima who stays, and Katoa might jump back into Q Cup for a bit just to build some form and confidence in him. He's only a young kid, so I don't think there's any harm in that. But Wayne Bennett usually does go for the more experienced options when he can. So yeah, for that reason, I think if you've got Nicarima, you hold him. As we just talked about, the Dolphins have really nice buy coverage over the back half of the buy sort of period. Um, but I don't think he's worth trading in. Harry Grant, he's a gun. Um, Same with Damien Cook. Obviously, these picks are dependent on them getting through Origin, but unless there's a severe long-term injury, I think we hold them even if they're being rested this week. Hopefully, you can still afford to cover that spot. Blake Brayley on a buy, so 85 last week is the only sort of playing hooker in this category. So I guess the Bulldogs made a few players look pretty good last week. To be fair, so obviously at the cheaper end of it as well. So if you can afford to hold him this week, it's probably not the worst idea. Reece Robson, again, depending on how he pulls up post Origin, but he's still a decent sort of pot option. The Cowboys don't have the best buy schedule going forward though, so maybe a one you want to move on from. That's totally understandable. Jerry Marshall King, so he's named to play, but this recurring sort of niggling shoulder injury, excuse me, might be a bit of a concern. So, if you are worried about that, you might want to look at to getting out of the pick until you sort of see him bounce back. But again, it's one of those ones like Nick Arame. If you've got him, I think you hold him. He is capable of scoring well. Um, and yeah, I think he's going to try and push through the shoulder pain as best he can, especially given they don't really have a experienced backup option there at the nine. So on to the cheapies, and top of the cheapie list this week is Jake Simkin. So obviously, since Api Coruscant's injury, he's stepped up to be the number one uh, hooker there at the Tigers. They did have young De Silva debut on the weekend, so he's not playing 80. But given the Tigers' great buy coverage after this week, he's definitely a viable option. I should have actually said he was on the buy this week, but yeah, really nice cash cow option. And Brendan Hand, so it looks like he's playing 80 minutes again this week. Josh Hodgson is nowhere to be seen in the extended squad for Parramatta. Uh, they do have the bye next week, so there is a risk if you bring him in this week that you only sort of get one big price rise, and then Hodgson comes back and they job share and all that because it hasn't been sort of identified exactly when Hodgson is due back. But um, yeah, I guess if you are looking to take a bit of a punt, it's not the worst idea in the world. Jake Turpin, so still got a nice break even relative to his 3 round average, but I think the ship sailed on that pick. Obviously, he's already made 130-ish thousand dollars. Definitely won't sort of make that from this point, you'd imagine. The Roosters don't play around 19. Yeah, so for less money and more coverage through those buy rounds, you could get Simpkins or Hands. So I don't think Turpin is the answer. Wade Egan, so looks like he's returned to that 80-minute role. The Warriors seem to be going back to the four forward bench rotation, which is obviously good news for him. So a nice pot option, particularly given the Warriors' sort of buy coverage over the next few rounds. So yeah, so if you like Wade Egan, I think it's a pretty decent shout. Reed Marnie, so 67 last week. So kept trying as he does every week. Um, Unfortunately, the Dogs seem to be slipping backwards a bit in terms of performance. But we know what he's capable of, and at 440k, he represents really great value. Obviously, not this week because they're on the bye, but if you wanted to look at picking him up next week, I think you'd be well served with someone that you could hold to the end of the season. Ray Stone, so named in the 13 this week, and it looks like they've shifted Kenny Bromwich back into the edge back row. So that bodes well for his minutes. I guess the only question mark is how Josh Kerr will fit in their rotation, given he's made the mid-season jump from the Dragons. But dual position, relatively cheap. Um, yeah, and we know what he's capable of playing in the 13 for big minutes. So good buy coverage as well, as we keep saying with the Dolphins players. So it could be a nice little shout. And Jake Granville, he's done his job for us to cover those first two buy rounds. So I think you can afford to cut him now. Obviously, if you need to go down, there's a couple of options. If you can go up to a Stone, that would be fine. And with that dual position swing as well. But yeah, thanks for your work, Jakey. But you cut. Onto the premium front row forwards. And I guess not a lot of value here, just points. So Tohu at the top of the list. Just interestingly enough, none of these guys played last week, so wasn't a big week for our front rowers scoring a lot of points. He's a keeper. He's slightly below the gun sort of scores, but we know what he's capable of, and the Warriors have that really great buy coverage coming up. So if you're looking for a premium trading, I would probably lean towards Tohu for that reason. Payne Haas, gun. Tino, so 3 round average of 101. He was very close to getting the tank status. Got a phone call. What's going on here? I'll get back to you. So get through this. So yeah, he was very close to this tank status, but given his average is on par with Payne Haas, I couldn't sort of uh, quite pull the trigger on it. Dave Fafita is like head and shoulders above the next best second rower. So, you know. But as we talked about, obviously, Origin aside, Tino should cover every other game for the rest of the season. So if you haven't got him, you know, he's expensive, but he's worth it, in my opinion. Ruben Cotter, really solid sort of point of difference. Work rate is incredible. It all just comes down to his minutes. Um, Joe Tarpany with the upcoming sort of round 19 buy coverage. I think, he's worth keeping. Corey Horsburgh and Jack DeBellin, um, they've both peaked in price. They do play around 19, but don't play around 20. So I don't think you can carry both. I don't think if you've got, like Joe Tarpany as well, you can't carry all three. So my preference would be Tarpany. Um, but I can see some people wanting to go at the point of difference options. Well, it's just not for me. So Vanilla Blake, he's a gun, averaging 70. Will dip in price, but does have that nice buy coverage, so it's worth a hold if you've got him. You could potentially wait a week or two if you could before bringing him in if you don't have him and you wanted to bring him in. Onto the mid-range options. So at the top of the list here, we've got Hame Sele. So it's been ticking along nicely. 3 round average of 59. So a nice sort of dual position swing option, particularly playing around 19. Other than that, South's buy coverage isn't fantastic, but um, that's the big buy round. So if you can cover the other rounds, then I think Sele's not the worst pick. Alex Twal, just giving him a mention, got his first try on the weekend, and I think we saw Vossi or heard Vossi come on the commentary of it, but yeah, he's averaging 53, break even 53. That sort of says everything you need to know. Just wanted to give him a shout out, getting the first bit of meat. Max King, so I guess in line with the Bulldogs, his performances have really slid over the past few weeks. He's been moved back to the bench. I don't know if that's a fatigue thing or a tactical thing, but it's clearly not working for him. So he's on the bye this week. If you find an option you prefer to bring in, I'd recommend it. But I guess you would have to go up from that price. There's really not a lot of value below that. Harry Edwards laid out last week with a training concussion. Has the bye this week, so I won't sort of hold him out of this week's game. Um, and at the price, he's probably not worth a sell at this point. Um, but yeah, obviously we just talked about the dogs aren't going too flash. Paseka, again another sort of player that's done his job for us, but his price isn't probably going to increase from there. So yeah, if you can find the money to make a jump to a garden, that's the move I would look at, and you can cut him. And TPJ, so I guess still out of the sort of Bulldogs forwards and the dual position options, he's still my preferred one, given his potential upside. He just probably needs to sort of knuckle down a bit and not try to be the hero so much, just do his bit for the team. Um, but he's probably not worth a trade in immediately. But could be, if you're looking for that last dual position sort of swing player for the back end of the season, I still think he's an alright pick. And then onto the cheapies. So there's not a lot of cheapies left, as you can sort of see from the prices there, with Lindsay Smith getting 70 on the weekend. So, yeah, I think the ship has gone on that pick too. Um, his main purpose was to sort of an extra number through round 16. But Panthers have named a pretty full strength side this week off the back of Origin. And assuming, everyone backs up, then Lindsay Smith's minutes will sort of drop back a bit. So, um, yeah, that's sort of done. Fainu, so I guess he was the big hope for a late season cheapy dual position swing type player. But he's been named in the 18 jumper this week. So, I guess it's good that he's not an auto emergency nightmare coming off the bench like he did last week. Um, but, it's probably one position that might be a bit dead for us now. I mean, if he's your front row forward four, it's not the worst thing in the world. Um, but, we want to keep our players on the pitch as long as we can. Sean Kepi, so I guess, another one who's sort of done his job. He's slow burned his way to 150k worth of price rises, so well done to you, Sean. Obviously, you could hold him until Jakey comes back, um, but yeah, if you can make the move now, there's no harm in doing that. Onto the premium second row options at the top of the list, Kyle Matangi. Um, So I would have probably put the super pod on there again, but I forgot. Averaging 70s essentially. South play around 19, which is nice. Obviously, the extra buys that we talked about aren't ideal, but yeah, I think if you're looking for a sort of pod to really stand out, here's the one. The more I look at him, the more I'm trying to work out how to get him in my side. Isaiah Yo, so he's a gun, Even though he's backing up from Origin, he'll probably still pump out big minutes and big scores. So no stress there. Hopgood with a 96 on the weekend. Just keeps showing why you need to have him in. So I guess a bit of hubris is the only reason why he's not back in my side. But yeah, it's hurting every week. Nikora with the 74. So, that's why we've got him in the side. He's a gun, but on the bye this week. So hold if you can. Scotty Sorensen, so he's played around 16. He's peaked in price, or his price isn't going to get any higher, so time to cut him now. Pat Carrigan, I guess people have him as that safe keeper option. Interestingly enough, it turns out now that Alex Twal scored, he's got the longest try scoring duck in the league. So he could boost that 63 average with a bit of late season meat. John Bateman, so he's been pretty good since shifting to lock forward, but on the buy this week, so and fairly highly priced, high break even. So uh, it's probably not worth a trade in at the moment. But definitely one to keep an eye out on. I guess another one to keep an eye out on was is Ryan Madison. Obviously, was affected by having to play in the six jumper last week, so a bit wider of the ruck, not really getting as involved as he normally would. So I think you can wait. He's back on the bench this week. It hasn't really affected his scores, but just give it a look, see how it goes. Sean Lane's floating around on the extended bench as well, so it'll be interesting to see where it all shakes out in the next sort of couple of weeks. Dave Fafita, so monster break even there, but this is why he's got the tank symbol. Even with Hopgood carving up, he's still averaging almost 10 points a game more. So if you've got Fafita, I think you hold. He had that one sort of concussion affected game that sort of caused this massive break even. But even despite that, his average and 3 round average is still insane. Onto the mid range options, and I guess at the top of this list we've got Liam Martin. So I think that his price has bottomed out um, after Kaloa Matangi. He's probably the next sort of pod target I would have, just because he's super involved and can get over for a try and all that good stuff. Obviously, his price and averages have been affected by injury, but he seems to be pretty clear of all that now. So probably one I'll look to, probably my last sort of second row option going into the back end of the season. But definitely one to keep a watch on. Nat Butcher, some massive 87 over the weekend for the Roosters. It was just all workload too. So, a nice pot option, not a attractive sort of option in that sense. Like he can score big, but it's quite rare. But has always been known for his ability to just put in work. Similarly, Josh King. So, I guess these guys have sort of been fairly side by side all throughout the season. Nat Butcher's price might be slightly elevated now, but you can see the averages are the same. Sort of the type of player they are is very much the same. Um, so yeah, you could probably have one of those guys as a pod. I probably wouldn't have both on the side. You're sort of limiting your ceiling there. Isaiah Papali'i. So I guess this is the sort of stuff we've been waiting for all season from him, and it seems now that they've shuffled Bateman to lock, sort of freed him up a bit more to attack on the edge. Um, so yeah, he's on the bye this week, but could be a sneaky pod for the run home, given the Tigers will be freed up after that. Olaquatu, so pod option. Obviously, Manly don't have the best buy coverage for the next big buy round, but that is their last buy. So if you can hold, fair play. No rush to get him in though. Teague Wilton, so 78 on the weekend, which puts him in a nice spot to pick up fairly cheap next week, and then has that buy coverage. So you could go someone like Pupley or Wilton. It's much of a muchness. The Cardi Party, so it keeps raging on. You can see the average is a bit less, but obviously Parramatta do have that better buy coverage, so that's the trade off there. But definitely post round 19, I think that's the time to sell him on and yeah, keep the good times going. Preston, so 47 on the weekend in a well beaten side. For a rookie, that's still amazing. Yeah, so you hold him this week and then you can use him for the rest of the season. Josh Schuster, so he's peaked in price now. Um, so I guess just need to make a decision on what to do with him. Uh, Obviously, I'm talking about him in the second row here, but if you've got him at 5'8", there's probably some nicer options for upgrades, downgrades. You can just hold on to him as an extra player, and you can use him to swing around trades and whatnot. Um, Also, if you've got the money to upgrade him, that's a great option too. Jackson Ford. So I guess if you've held him for this long, you can probably hold him through to around 20. He should play every game between now and then reassess. But Cam Murray, I think we've still got to cut him. There's been a bit of talk. He's sort of limped his way through Origin camp, but he's right to play. But I guess the fact that that's coming up means that he's not 100%. So, he's not much use to you when he is playing for South. And also, South don't have that fantastic bye coverage. Murray won't play around 19, so there's no point holding him for that. Yeah, so, you know, it's one where you sort of get out of the pick and then, hopefully he stays super cheap. And then he'll be the first one bought next year. Hopefully he's fit and firing. And Eli Katoa, so not named in the squad for Melbourne this week, so I think you've got to get out of that pick. It's a fair bit of money to sit on the bench indefinitely. And with the big break even, you can wait for him to come back and drop in price and then snatch him up as a potential bargain for the run home. So cheapy options this week, there is a few, but they're all quite iffy. So Cleese Haas is at the top of the list. He sort of gets a bit of a mention based on name alone. Um, Break even of -21 is nice. This is all dependent on whether Fafita backs up from Origin. If he's rested, Haas will come into the side in the second row and play big minutes, and then it's a good get on. Obviously, the coverage for round 19 will be good too. But if Fafita plays, he'll be coming off the bench, and um, that average of 32 is probably generous at that point. So, I guess if you needed a cheap, excuse me, a cheap downgrade, so say you needed to sell Schuster to make, spend some money elsewhere, for instance, he would be my pick, but I'd really only want to do it if Fafita is rested. Jamin Salmon, so 93 on the weekend, -20 break even. A lot of people would think, oh, hang on, there's a bit of cash there, but he's moved back to his sort of bench role where he mostly plays as a relief on the edge. So, he might play 30, 40 minutes for Liam Martin this week, but on that edge, it's still only worth about 30 points. So, his dual position's nice, his break even's nice. The job role that he has is not. Sean Bloor, so this one sort of snuck a little bit under my radar. I didn't really notice it with Bateman moving to the lock that he'd come back in on the edge. And obviously 92 on the weekend. This is what we were sort of hoping for when we had him pegged at the start of the year at 230k. So on the buy this week, but definitely an option you can look out for next week. But the price may be a bit prohibitive to that as well. All right, Finny Fuiaki, I think I got that right on the first go. So obviously the cheapest option available, scored 61 on the weekend, clearly had his most minutes for the year. Has been named to start this week, but that is given that Jeremiah Nanai has been named on the extended bench for the Cowboys. So another one you might have to sit and wait for before bringing him in with confidence. Um, doesn't play around 19, which isn't ideal. He'd be the perfect sort of pickup for them if he was going to be in the starting team. But yeah, just he was named to start. the right sort of numbers in terms of price and break even. But yeah, it's very risky. Curtis Moran, so scored 62, got a try on the weekend. Um, a sort of cheap option that is playing. And I guess, seems to be featuring more and more for the Bulldogs. Um, but is on the bye this week, obviously, so no need to rush to bring him in. On to the halfbacks, and at the top of the list, Sean Johnson this week. It seems a bit weird for someone that's 700k, but I've got him as the best buy this week. So, we've talked about Warriors' excellent buy coverage. Obviously, you get someone like Sean Johnson at 705. It's expensive, but negative 16 break even. We'll play the next 4 rounds. And then hopefully, with a bit of luck, his price will be fairly close to Nathan Cleary. And you can just do that flick when Cleary comes back, probably just after Origin 3. So, yeah, if you've got, yeah, I think if you've got anyone else, you can trade to Sean Johnson without any issue, except for money issues, obviously. Uh, so Sandon Smith, the Roosters, young gun, he's named to start at halfback again this week. So scored 55 last week. Um, so yeah, so if you are really stuck for cash, you could you trade all the way down to him. He's dual position as well, so you can tuck him into the 5'8" if you need to later on. Um, but yeah, I think at this point in the season, most of us are running two guns in the halfback slot. Um, so yeah, probably not the biggest or the best place to sort of look for a cash cow. Jerome Hughes, so 3 round average of 83. He's done his job for us. I wouldn't trade him in at this point. If you've got him, you could hold him till round 19 and then obviously trade him. Um, but again, I'd rather Sean Johnson. So even if you had Hughes, I'd find the 65k and make that sideways move. Jack Cogger, I think again another one where you had to really get him in last week if you were going to commit to it. His price has started to move up. He won't play around 19. So yeah, he's probably got 2 more games in him, and by that time, Cleary should be good to come back. DCE, just playing Origin, and his average is there with the sort of other pod options, but like I said, he plays Origin, so he's a pass for me. Adam Reynolds, he has that upside, but he's a trap. Matt Burton, so another late out, called up into the Origin squad, sort of ruined my trade plans. But he was on the bye this week anyway, so that's fine. Mitchell Moses, I guess, playing in the New South Wales side means that he's a pass as well, sort of same sort of logic as DCE. But it'd be interesting to see what happens if New South Wales were to lose Origin, as I said at the time of recording, and I'll probably try to get this out tonight, so it's there. But yeah, who knows what the result is? um, but yeah, he doesn't play next week anyway. Could miss round 19 with Origin, so just wait and see for the time being. Nico Hines, you knew this was coming, and as a Bulldogs fan, I was dreading it. But 129 on the weekend, on the bye this week, but you hold him. If you haven't got SJ, you get SJ into covering this week. And I guess, the only potential concern could be if New South Wales lose Origin. Do they look at game 3, maybe playing Hines at 6? So going with like a Hines and Moses combo just to try and shake it up, just to see if, he can provide that spark at that higher level if he actually gets a decent amount of game time. Nathan Cleary, we've talked about getting Sean Johnson in. It's he's still he's just a few weeks away, so I think you can still cut him, um, make that move. You've got 150k there. If you can keep most of it in the bank or some of it in the bank, just to cover the difference when he's ready to come back in. Then you're set. Into the 5'8" position, and I've got Luke Metcalf at the top of the list here this week. Third game on the third game before, sorry, the last buy round. So his price has elevated a bit, but still got nice negative break even. Warriors we've talked about their buy coverage. The only concern is Tamari Martin's probably not too far away from coming back, so whether uh, Metcalf can hold the spot. I know it was his at the start of the season in the preseason, and then unfortunately got injured and lost the spot that way. So be interesting to see how that shakes up. But yeah, if I think it could be worth the punt to bring him in if you're looking for a cheap option at 5'8". Tom Dearden, so 118 on the weekend. It'll be a bit of a cheeky cash grab, and that's about it for the next 2 weeks. Then doesn't play around 19. Um, yeah, and the Cowboys buy coverage. They've still got another bye to get through, so probably not the best value pick. Carl Olawapu, so didn't score very well on the weekend. Spent a fair bit of time at lock trying to get Rajab into the game um, before they did take him off. So yeah, not his best, but he's still 18 years old, so he was always going to be a slow burn with him. But he's on the bye this week anyway, so if you want to get out of the pick, you could. You need the numbers, that's understandable. But if you can hold, that's good too. Joe Mane. So this is the reason why we picked Joe Mane was for this 117. Um, his 3 round average of 70 is great, break even's great, but he has been selected to play in the centres again. So he scores well in the centres, but it's not as good as when he's more on the ball at 5'8" or ultimately fullback. So the ship has sailed on that pick. If you've got him, you can hold him until round 19. He should peak in price by then, and then you just trade him off to whoever you like. Kalen Ponga, so 3 round average of 88. I think he's earned the gun status now that he's back at fullback. Um, yeah, so I've got him as that point of difference sort of gun for the run home. Don't have any plans to trade him out. Isaiah Katoa. So I guess it's one of those ones where if you've held him, you could probably try to get the next month out of him. But as I said, Sean O'Sullivan is not far away, and my gut feeling is that Katoa is the one to make way. So yeah, I think if you go from him to Metcalf, that's same buy coverage, probably better scoring potential from Metcalf, slightly better job security too, in my opinion. But yeah, if you need to, you can maybe just go to Oluwapu, whose job security seems more nailed on, given they're just trying to get games into him. But yeah, there's no real great cheap options at 5'8". Let's be honest. uh, Dejan Arce, so I guess thanks to Dylan Brown's absence, he's found himself a starting spot there at the Eels. So nice buy coverage. Average is up there with the sort of pot options. Um, yeah, so it just depends if you want that sort of coverage from Parramatta in that position. Uh, yeah, he's a bit cheaper than some of the alternate options too, which is nice. So yeah, could be a nice pod pick. Cam Munster, Garden. Don't need to say much more about that. Phoenix Crossland, he's done his job for us, so I think we can cut him now. Again, you probably have to look upwards, I think, from him. It's not the easiest given his awkward price, but yeah, there's not too much below. I guess if you need to go sideways, Arcee would be the right pick. Brandon Wakeham, so, on the bye this week, we'll play every other round after that. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Luke Brooks' injury. I don't remember off the top of my head. So, yeah, could be a pod pick. Probably not for me though. Jerome Luai, I think it's time to cut him if you haven't already done so. And Cody Walker, he's a gun. He's playing this week, so get him in if you like. On to the centre wings and the premium options, and Val Holmes is at the top of the list given his break even of 28. I guess the average of 71 probably does put him in the gun territory, but I guess the fact he plays in the centres means he can go occasionally missing from games. So for that reason, I've downgraded him, I suppose, to keep a status. But we know his upside and what he's capable of, so it's a pretty good option if you do have him. Charles Nickel clock started, so 3 round average of 94. This is, I guess, the reason why we've had him in the side for the season is he was criminally underpriced, and now he's sort of showing what he's really capable of. Yeah, so hang on to him if you've got him. He's gonna go really well over the next few weeks. Greg Marzu has done his penance for missing the bus. You know, the numbers don't lie though. Average of 77. He's an absolute gun. Brian Toto, solid base, work rate. We love it. Can score a try. Um, so yeah, solid keeper option. Ruben Garrick was a little bit disappointing on the weekend with 26. I've got the gun symbol on him still, but I guess the move to centre probably hasn't helped him too much. And saying that, he did score 160, I think it was, 2 weeks ago at centre. So it's not the sort of death sentence for him, but I think the sort of extenuating factor there was Tommy Turbo in the side. When with Tommy Turbo out, it's not there for him. So, and with Tommy Turbo being rested this week, I could understand people maybe wanting to get out of the pick, bank the 782K, get someone like a nickel clock start or just trying to think of someone who could even go sideways to a Zarko if you haven't got him. Could that will play in round 19 and more consistent sort of output. Ronaldo Mulatalo, so scored 60 on the weekend. Um, you know, we're including him in the conversation because of the Sharks' buy coverage and their attacking upside. So yeah, on the buy this week. No need to stress this week, but one to keep an eye on going forward. Alex Johnston. So if you want to ride the roller coaster, that's fair enough, but it's definitely not for me. Jermaine Osako. So averaging 80 for the season, so he's a gun. Dolphins have great buy coverage coming up, so yeah, if you like I said, even if you've got Garrick and you wanted to trade to Osako, I would not be against it. Campbell Graham. So I guess given the call up of Matt Burton to the squad after Latrell's pull out, I think it's fair to suggest that he has slipped down the totem pole a little bit for New South Wales selection. So he could be available round 19 and be a really sort of nice option for that round. Nick Meaney, 58 on the weekend, but still averaging 72 across the season, 3 round average of 69. So uh, keep him until I guess we get more concrete news about Paps' return. Wateni Zelezniak, so if you got on for a bit of a cash grab a few weeks ago and you've still held him, fair play. He could, score well over the next month. I probably would have got out of the pick, so I'm not really talking to myself on that one. Talakai, he's on the buy. He's got a high break even, but again, Sharks, good buy coverage, attacking upside. You've got to be in it to win it. Onto the mid-range options and Will Warbrick, so massive 136 on the weekend, 4 tries, and just looks more confident. Like I haven't really watched the Storm for a while. I haven't watched too much footy recently, actually, but finally had a bit of a quiet weekend where I could sit and just watch some footy. And yeah, Warbrick was doing the business. So if you held on to him for the round 16 buy coverage, you've got to hold him a little bit longer. And even if you can cover for around 19, he could be, a handy sort of centre wing six type option for the rest of the season. Tyrone Peachy, 74 on the weekend, has done his job for us. Now that Tago's back, he's not going to get a look in unless there's injuries. So thanks for your service, Peach. You've done me a service, an extra 200 something K. Fair play. The Hammer is named to back up this week, so he wasn't backing up from Origin, the first Origin, but has been named a fullback for the Dolphins this week. I think, given their sort of dip in form, they can't really afford to do too much resting. So, yeah, nice sort of potential point of difference, keeper option. A lot of people have got him, that's why he's got the keeper symbol there. Speaking about Isaac Targo, 91 last week, so, he's just back to what he was doing before his injury. Really sort of nice pot option given that he's only about 2% owned. Might not quite have the sort of consistent floor, but the upside is definitely there. Paul Alamotti, so 24 last week. Um, yeah, has the buy this week. We've sort of talked about he has a nice buy coverage, but as an owner, my patience is running thin. He's only 19, we get that, but we need points. Um, so there's a couple of cheaper options this week we could look at. Um, and yeah, so if you're sort of struggling for numbers this week, like I am, trading Alamotti down to one of these cheap options, I think isn't the worst bet. Taruva, he's done his job as well. So if you can, if you'd like to cut him, you can. You could probably hold to around 19, but he won't make that much more cash. Jacob Kiraz, so I guess along with the rest of the Bulldogs, probably just hasn't been able to score to his potential since coming back from injury, which is frustrating. Um, but I guess if I had to make a decision between him and Alamotti, I'm trading out Alamotti. We know Kiraz's upside, and his work rate, his offload ability, all that sort of stuff. So I think if you keep one of them, it's got to be Kiraz. Will Penasini. So I guess if you've got him as a buy sort of pot option, you just ride it out. His price is dipping, and he's not returning. Um, you look at players around him like Gutho and Moses. Um, even I think Simonson did quite well this week, but you can't sort of start jumping ship and wasting trades moving sideways between the Parramatta backline. Whichever one you've gone with, whether it's him or even Mike Acevo I've listed there, I think you've just got to keep the faith. Jack Bird, so he's back after his injury hiatus. Um, he named in the second row, so really nice dual position option. Especially given Lemuelu has been named on the bench this week, so they've gone back to Kafusi and Kenny Bromwich on the edges. Um, high break even as well. So even though he's got the nice buy coverage, he's just not going to score that well. So if you can, I think you can get out of that pick. Unfortunately, I think I need the actual playing number this week, so it's not going to be great. But yeah, he's still done the job for us. So fair play, Connolly. Thanks for what you've done so far. And Khan Pereira, so I guess one that a lot of people probably got off of a while ago. But I have noted he's still fairly popularly or fairly highly owned. Um, and as we talked about, the Titans are now free of all the buys. So, if you're just looking for a number over the next few weeks, you could just keep hanging on. I would not recommend trading him in though. And then on to the cheapy options. And as you can see, we do have quite a few options this week, which is fantastic. So yeah, some of that mid-priced deadwood like an Alamotti type or Tyrone Peachy. There's definitely some nice downgrade options this week. At the top of the list, we've got Semi Valame playing for the Cowboys. So had that massive game in his first game. Um, 37 last week wasn't, anywhere near as good. Um, so I guess the thing is he's got that break even of negative 26, but that massive price is only going to be in his 3 round average for one more week. And then the break even will shoot right up. So, he might only really make one big price jump, and then that would be it. And also, given the Cowboys don't have the best buy coverage, um, might be a reason to avoid this pick. I guess to his advantages, it looks like he's won the job on merit. Kyle Felt has, been sort of moved out to make way for him. So, if you're looking for a secure player that plays round 20 and this round, you could go for Valame. Richie Kenner, so I guess another one on the bubble this week, averaging 54, negative 24 break even, given his, 260k. It's pretty nice. I'm not quite sure on his job security. I probably should have looked more into it beforehand, but I'm assuming he's playing on the wing that Tane Milne was taking up, so just outside Campbell Graham. But yeah, you can't usually go too wrong with a South player at that sort of price if their job security is decent. Yeah, I just have to have a look if Mill's injured or if he's just been dropped. Um, but I guess one of the players that I'm more keen on is Dylan Lucas. I think it's Dylan. I've actually forgotten his first name. The Newcastle Knights centre wing, but has been playing in the second row. So scored 67 last week. 242k, negative 19. He's named this week in the second row as well. I was sort of initially thinking we have to wait and see if Frizzell was going to back up, but as it turns out, Frizzell's playing. It's actually Lockie Fitzgibbon that's made way with the HIA, so he's good to go for this week. After that, he may become a bit of an AE issue if he gets dropped back to the bench, as the sort of edge replacement player. So that's probably the big sort of cross against him. Also won't play around 19. Tyrell Sloan, so I guess people might see it under 400k fullback, negative break even. Um, but, we've already been there. We've already ridden the roller coaster. um, so, yeah, and this time he's an extra 100k more expensive. So, I don't think the potential for cash is there to sort of risk it, especially given a bit of internal drama at the Dragons, like there hasn't been already. But Ben Hunt wanting out and all that sort of thing. I think just until you see how it shakes out, other than maybe Jack Bird's the one exception I've added in, I'd just put a line through all the Dragons players. Kyle Labert, so bottom dollar cheapie that is named to play again this week. Not sure the job security is fantastic, but bottom dollar is. So, if you're looking to maximize the cash out this week and get a playing number, that would be the logical choice. But probably the best pick, I think, is Valence Tafare. So, named to play in the centres this week, not on the bench. Brenko Lee's out with an injury. I guess the only thing is we don't know how long for. But given, they were embarrassed by Manly before the bye, this is really his chance to lock down that spot. And we've talked about the Dolphins have that really nice bye coverage. So yeah, so I guess out of all of these options, that is my pick. And I think, yeah, given I was looking for a cheap second centre wing option rather, I think he'll be making an appearance in my side this week. Tommy Talau, so didn't play, did play, didn't he? Oops, skipped ahead. I might have stuffed up there, or maybe he didn't play last week. I can't remember. I know they had Stafford Toll playing at 6, so they must have. I don't know. Either way, his average probably says it all. He's on the bye this week, but probably not really worth considering. Cheekham, so didn't play last week. He's named on the bench. It seems like his spot in the team was edge dependent, in the sense of he was, filling in for Kaloa Matangi on whichever edge he plays on. I should do my research, but yeah, they've named Jed Cartwright to play on the opposite edge, where I guess you normally have Jai Arrow for Souths. So for that reason, I think you can uh, you cut Cheekham. Like I said, there's a few nice downgrade options. If you want to stick with South, you just bring in Richie Kenner, nice and easy. Yeah, if you want to, take a punt on an dual position option, you could maybe plump for Lucas and just wait out till round 18. Fingers crossed that all goes to plan. Or another option is you could go with Rocco Berry. So he's back in the team. He had that concussion game and sort of had to sit out for a couple of weeks, but is named in the centres again. Uh, I guess the break even isn't good, but once his HIA score comes out of his average, he should be back to making a bit of money. But also, Warriors have that nice buy coverage. So, yeah, I think if you're looking purely in terms of buy coverage, Rocco Berry is the way to go. His job security is probably slightly better than Tafare's, but the upside and just the vibe of it is why I'm leaning towards Tafare. Billy Smith, I've got the chop symbol on him. It's probably a bit harsh, but there's just so many nice downgrade options this week. I feel like he's done his job, played round 16, made a bit of money. Um, but yeah, also the Roosters haven't got the strongest set of halves at the moment, so might be worth a shout to move on from him. And then on to the fullbacks to finish. So Tommy Turbo's at the top of the list, and I guess in quite tragic news, they've named him on the extended bench. So potentially going to rest him this week, which is a bit scary. And I'm pretty sure also they play in the last game of the round, so you can't sort of sit around and wait all weekend to see if he's going to play or not. You've sort of got to make a decision about your fullbacks before then. So, I guess, the numbers sort of suggest hold, but I mean, depends who else you've got too. Um, in saying that, I think he is the one that you do hold regardless of who else you have. Because, yeah, we just know what he's capable of. Gutho, it's 132 on the weekend, so massive effort again from Gutho. 3 round over 117, negative break even. Um, so if you've got the money, I guess you want to sort of go from Turbo to him. Again, I wouldn't do it, but at least yeah. Like I said, I was going to say guaranteed points, but you can be a bit up and down. Old Gutho, so not for me, but I can understand why people would want to get on. Blake Taff, so I guess this niggling injury from Latrell um, just means that he's going to play this week, could potentially play next week. But even if he didn't, he would play around 19 because you'd assume Latrell, if he's fit, will play for New South Wales. Um, so yeah, nice little cash grab option. If, like I said, you've got no other options and no real cash to speak of anywhere else, you could downgrade to TAF and make a little bit of cash that way. Reece Walsh, solid keeper option. Probably, unfair given a season average of 78 to not call him a gun. But I guess he has shown a little bit of inconsistency. Teddy, though, despite the lower average, the 3 round of 101 is a bit more representative of his skills. We know he's a gun. The big sort of knock is that he won't play around 19, but that is the Roosters' last buy. So I think if you can cover for round 19, there is an argument to go from Turbo to Teddy. Um, but yeah, I guess there's probably better options than that than trading Turbo out. Dylan Edwards, so 77 on the weekend. He's perfectly fine and capable, but I'm just think, yeah, just pass. It's not for me. We've got to draw the line somewhere. But if you did have him, it's probably a decent pod option. There should just be pods all across the board here, probably, to be fair. Drinkwater, another nice score on the weekend, 95, so three rounder of 105. So what's that? There's four fullbacks with that 100 average. So I guess, as much as possible, you might not be flush for trades, but I think this is why you've got to, make sure you've got, where possible, two playing fullbacks every round. Is you're just missing out on points. And that's sort of, I guess, the downside of a player like Taff. Is, he's scoring all right given he's not on the bench anymore. But yeah, just elite scoring in this position. So yeah, so if you've got Scott Drinkwater, you just wait till round 19 and then you flip to whoever you want. Dream Buller, so 43 on the weekend, so his price rises have sort of stopped at 500,000, but that's still $500,000 that he's made, unreal. So I think, if you're in a situation like me where you've got Turbo and Buller, I'm thinking it's time to trade Buller. He does cover around 19, which is fantastic. But I think, especially if you're in a situation like me, I've already wasted two trades on, well, not wasted, but used two trades on Turbo, trading him out and back in when I thought he was going to sort of miss out on a 4 week stretch there. Um, but yeah, so I think Buller's done good for us, but it's probably time to move him on to get up playing fullback this week. Will Kennedy, so another sort of lowish score from a player on a bye this week. So same sort of thing, I guess. If you've got Kennedy, even though he plays the other games, I'd be very tempted to trade him out. Excuse me. Latrell, if you've still got him, you have to cut him. That's way too much money sitting on the bench. Particularly, like I said, when you've got four players that are scoring over 100 in the position. All right, so to summarise, with the buy, keep, sell, avoid matrix, buying this week, I think Sean Johnson, if you haven't got him, he's the number one target. Um, I guess after fullback, halfback's probably the next highest scoring position. So you really need to try and maximise the players playing. And Sean Johnson will do that for you over the next few weeks. And Valence Tafare, like I said, there's a lot of cheap centre wing options this week, which is really nice. But I think I've got him as the best. Just again, upside, buy coverage, um, happy days. On the keep list, I'm keeping Turbo. He's I guess the thing, we've said his name on the extended bench. He could still play. I think if they can avoid it, they will rest him. But I think if required, he'd be good to go, assuming he pulls up from Origin, that is. So yeah, I think for that reason you keep a hold of Turbo. Also keep a hold of Warbrick. I think he's reset his cash generation, so you can hold him through to around 19 and then trade him off then. On the sell list, so I've got Buller on the sell list for the reasons I've just explained. I've got to keep Turbo. His buy coverage is great, but we just need points this week. So yeah, he's going to go. And Lemuelu as well, moved to the bench, high break even. So, time to go for Connolly. And on the avoids, I've said avoid Sloan. We talked about the roller coaster, the drama at the Dragons. Um, yeah, so don't get sucked into the temptation there. And also, just for this week, avoid Madison. Just, it's highly unlikely he'll hit his break even, so he'll drop a bit in price even if he does punch out at 70 off the bench, which he's totally capable of. But then you grab him for around 19 and beyond. So that wraps up the stock market video for this week. Um, for those people that do enjoy the stock market, it will be on a hiatus for a couple of weeks. So I fly out to Europe on Friday night, so massive week between the Origin and then heading off to Europe. I will keep up with the round reviews as best I can. I did try it out with one of the AFL review videos I did, where essentially I was just recording off my phone and talking at the same time. So yeah, I'll still try to get some content out there for all the viewers, but it won't be fantastic. And saying that, I won't apologise for it because you got to live your life. So um, yeah, obviously, if you've got any thoughts around those players that I've mentioned, or maybe players I haven't mentioned, I probably do skip over a couple of the more higher owned ones, but I guess they're all just sort of much of a muchness at that point. That you can keep them or you can not have them. Just try to pick the players that I think are worth talking about. So, but yeah, as always, if you're enjoying the content, remember like the video, subscribe to the channel. Um, it just helps spread it out there to more people too. I've had a couple of interactions with, I guess, newer viewers of the channel recently, so that's been really great too. Um, and yeah, other than that, thanks very much, and I'll catch you in a couple of weeks.